everyone? I am back for 2025, first guest of the year, the opener, the man with the longest box, and the man who is here to bring back the patriarchy, John's Long Box.
Hey, how you doing? How's everything? I'm your first guest of the year.
You are.
This is, I'm sorry to say, it's a bad beginning for the year.
No, it's an excellent omen. So, you had a lot going on back in 2024. Your first campaign, you're building the channel, building an audience. You released Heroic Tales 1. I believe it made more than enough to fund individually on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and Fund My Comic. But all combined together made a fantastically successful campaign run. How you feeling? Are the butterflies gone? Can you rest, relax?
Yeah, it's funny because like it's like an addiction. It's like, okay, now I can't wait for issue number 2. Now we're working on issue number 2 and we're about 50% done, and now I can't wait for issue number 3. You know, it's like, it's like as you get close to it, it gets farther away. You know what I mean? Like you're never gonna be satisfied. Mm-hmm. I just want to. I just wish I could make comics faster, but I want to work with Renzo as my artist, so I could only, and Renzo is working with RJ for the Fourth Age, and Aaron Sparrow, he's doing that Kneel Before Doomface. So, he's got, I also don't want to be his only means of income. So that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's a little frightening.
Yeah. So we could only do things so fast. So, as you said, last year was a big year for me. It was an insane year for me. My channel just started doing really good. Can't complain. I had a lot of guests come on, and Jim Shooter and Mark Miller, and just got a lot of attention. And I crowdfunded my first comic, and it did really well. I made a lot of mistakes, so I won't be repeating those mistakes for the second campaign. And I'm real proud because my comic, it came out 3 weeks late, but I think in crowdfunding, 3 weeks late is on time, But I got the proofs, and then I noticed there was a huge error that I just couldn't. So I had to resubmit the file, and I put my printing at the bottom of the list. And I was so proud that we were going to be delivering on time. I could just rub it in anybody's face. But then 3 weeks late, nobody complained. But I know it. So I'm going to try to be on time again. But this can be a little tricky. For issue number 2, I called the comic Heroic Tales, not the Patriarch, because my original concept is kind of like Astro City, by Kurt Busiek, if you remember that comic at all. Every issue was a different story, different character. Like, not an anthology, because it was one story, and then featuring this character. Then the next issue was one story featuring, and I wanted to do that. So when I told people issue number 2 wasn't even going to have the Patriarch, people were getting like, but I like the Patriarch. The comic didn't even come out yet, and they're like, but I'm like, you got fan art already, and people, they like the whole concept, and I do. And I'm like, am I shooting myself in the foot? Like I said, I try to learn from my mistakes. I try to learn from other people's mistakes. Like, one of the things I followed Diversity in Comics, your boy Zach, and he made that Jawbreakers comic, and he didn't make another Jawbreakers for like 5 years. And I
think, but technically he didn't deliver the Jawbreakers for 5 years. He had a campaign,
but he made like 7 or 8 other comics in between issues of Jawbreakers. And some people are like, yeah, but I want Jawbreaker, and I'm like, I think I'm doing the same thing, So every issue going forward is going to have the Patriarch. He's my flagship character. He put me on the map. I got, dance with the one that brought you, kind of thing. So
I remember before you had talked about, like, you were going to have A story, B story, just like in Heroic Tales. There's a B story,
correct,
with the man in the suit.
Right.
So going forward, is the A story always going to be the Patriarch?
Correct.
Or Oh, okay.
So the A story is always going to be the patriarch, and then I'll illustrate what I'm doing. So, okay, you got Rima the Jungle Queen, okay, and then when you flip the comic over, it's going to have another cover.
Oh, okay.
So issue number 2 is going to be the patriarch. The name of that story is Subterranean Homesick Blues, and then when you flip it over, it's going to be Mary Sue, Endless Possibilities, and so somewhere in the middle of the book, all of a sudden there's going to be a page upside down, and I know my normie friends are going to be like, your comic's printed wrong. So I'm going to have to explain in videos and stuff like that what a flip book is. So that way there's going to be 2 front covers. If you like Mary Sue better, you put the patriarch facing the cardboard. But if you like the patriarch better, you put poor Mary Sue. Or you know what you do? You buy 2 copies, and then you can have them both. So, and I'm also going to tone down. I had 6 variant covers, because I was all excited my first, and I hired legendary artists, which is a little bit of this. So I'm going to have just the A cover, which is Renzo doing patriarch, and then flip it over Mary Sue. And then I already got Josh Howard did from Dead at 17 fame. He did a Mary Sue cover, and then you flip it over. It's Jose Garcia did a patriarch cover. So, and that's it.
Wow.
Just 2 versions of the comic going forward. You only get one chance to make your first comic, so I went all out. But now I gotta tone down the expenses. But I made Patriarch T-shirts. I'm making Mary Sue T-shirts. Here, like, little spoiler, I got this Mary Sue sticker. That's her symbol.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I got
sort of like the dove hands.
Yeah. Well, I explain it in the comic, but Mary Sue's family is they're Chinese from China. Sue is a Chinese name, and in the 50s there was I forget what they were called, but they basically Mao Zedong purges. One of the things they did was they got rid of all the Christians, or wanted to get rid of all the Christians, or so Mary Sue's family fled China and moved to Flushing, Queens, destitute, and the grandparents opened up like a little corner convenience store. Mary Sue's parents turned it into a supermarket. It becomes like Sue Mart. And I actually know the exact location where it's going to be set. It's because I love this part of downtown Flushing. It's where you can get all the great soup dumplings, and you know what I mean. So I'm going to go there and take pictures when it's time for Renzo to draw.
Nice.
Make it look like that. So, and then Mary Sue, she grows up wealthy. She's a Roman Catholic. She's perfect. It's like I'm goofing on the concept of a Mary Sue. If anybody knows, a Mary Sue is a derogatory term, usually for a female character that's perfect at the beginning and never changes. So I'm like, I'm going to own it. She's going to be she's Mary Sue, and she's perfect. But perfect is a relative term. Like, if me and you say something's perfect, we could have like, oh, my wife is perfect. And then I'm like, his wife's not perfect. She has blonde hair and I like brunettes. You know what I mean? Like, get perfect.
Yeah.
So, but Mary Sue's perfect in her grandmother's eyes. She's a good Roman Catholic. She's a PhD. She's a good girl. She studies hard. She doesn't go out drinking. So when she goes away to college, she gets teased. You know what I mean? So she's a nerdy science girl, and everybody's like, she's going to the toga parties and she's looking at the nerdy boy outside studying under the tree. And, that you like him, you know what I mean? So she gets teased. So she finds a group. I made up this group. It's called the St. Thomas Society. And if you know the apostles, Thomas was the saint that needed proof when Jesus came to him. He put his fingers in the holes. So in my world, St. Thomas is the patron saint of scientists. They need. So there's a group of Roman Catholic scientists that she joined, and she bought the T-shirt. So that T-shirt becomes her lucky totem. And when she gets her job at the beginning of the story, that causes the chaos that gets her superpowers. It becomes her superhero symbol. So
very cool. And speaking of doing more than one comic at once, I remember before you were talking about another comic.
Oh, yes. You asked me, said this was a big year, and I started talking about it. And I do this all the time. I get excited and forget what I'm talking about. So 2024 was a big year. As you know, I went to the hospital. I had hernia surgery, You know, I was out for 6 weeks, and oh man, it was the first time I was in the hospital. That's a lot of fun. Then I recovered and got into a car accident, broke my neck, and was out of work for a couple of months. So I just had a lot of free time to write scripts and stuff. So I was on I forget where I was. Tonic Mole and I were talking. I don't know if you know Tonic Mole, but he does a comic called Saving the Universe.
Mm-hmm.
And, we were joking about what would be the worst comic book ever. And I just said, how about a comic book about a comic book collector who has to move out of his parents' basement? I was just making a joke. And then Tonic Mole goes, that would be the best comic book story. So we just started goofing around. And next thing you know, I fell in love with the idea. And I wrote this story about Eddie Pagano, who 35 years old. He works for Subart, so it's tied into Heroic Tales. He's one of the managers of the many Subarts, and he's got to move out of his parents. His father's retired police officer wants to move to Florida. So now, how dare he do that to Eddie? He has to move out of his and then he goes to the comic book store and he's like, "Guess what? My dad's moving out. I got to move out." And all of the comic book guys are like, "Oh my God, that's awful. You have that great base." You know, he lived in that his entire life. He's never lived anywhere else. So instantly everybody in the comic book store understands how horrible this is. And then he finds out that there's a comic called The Doomed Earth, and it's Crisis on Infinite Earths. Top Comics, his favorite comic book company, is ending its continuity and starting over again and getting rid of all of that childish Silver Age stuff that Eddie loves. So everything is his real world is ending, his comic book world is ending, and he can't deal with it, you know. So poor Eddie is doomed. You
know. So excuse me. How is it going making 2 at a time? Like, are you able to speaking of your boy Zach, like, it seemed like his original idea was, you have the main one, and then if he's the writer, he would have time to manage some other art teams to produce like 3-4 comics a year.
In his defense, he makes a lot more money than me, so,
yeah.
So wildly successful. So he could afford to do, and he could also afford to have a flop comic. Not that he ever has, but he could afford it. So what I'm doing, I literally just sent out the script to Eddie is Doomed to Oscar and Tonic Bowl yesterday. I originally wrote it and sent it to Tonic Bowl almost a year ago, and he's like, I'll work on it when I can, but he's also working on 3 or 4 comics.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, send me the script back, and I read it, and I was like, ooh. So I rewrote it, and one of the things, I'm glad I rewrote it because I fell in love with all of these goofy Silver-aged DC type characters, and then Oscar, who was the colorist on the suit, the story that you were just talking about, he started drawing up all these characters. And when I saw his sketches of these characters, I'm like, these characters need more time. So now it's not just Eddie is Doomed. So now there's going to be 2 artists. So Tonic Ball is going to draw the real world, kind of like a Love and Rockets style. Just like I was thinking of making it black and white and then have the comic book color, but I think we'll just color it all. And then Oscar is drawing, cosmic Crisis on Infinite Earth, all the planets merging, and you know what I mean. So like Eddie will be dealing with his life, and then he'll pick up the comic, and then we'll cut to Oscar, things like that. So I don't know. So how am I jumping? Cool. I don't know. I'll let you know because I just sent them the script the other day. Oscar's been chomping up at the bit, but it just turned into something I really fell in love with, and I only write scripts on Sundays, so and then overtime and everything like that. So I Oscar's been like, where's the script? Where's the script? Where's the script?
So that has me wondering. I know we've talked in the past that you would like to be retired in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
So do you think you'll be able to get yourself sort of set up so that, maybe when it does come time to retire, you'd be able to just crank out 3 or 4 a year?
That depends on how well they sell, because when I retire, the money that I make retiring is going to pay my house, my bills and stuff.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were just talking we had no problem. We're like, we'll pack up and move to the cheapest state. I'll make friends, whatever.
Good.
But
I'll be seeing you, neighbor.
where do you live, if you don't mind? Which state?
Ohio. It's pretty cheap out here.
Well, I live in New York, so everything's cheaper.
Yeah.
The first thing is that they can't tax the pension. I think there's only 8 or 9 states that don't tax your pension. So those are the only states that I'm considering. I don't know if Ohio's on that list.
I'm not sure.
But now my wife got involved in a local church, and she's like, friends. She's like, I don't want to move. And my family's here. I don't want to move either.
Yeah.
But it depends. It depends on if things change in New York.
So,
but to answer your question,
yep.
The money that I made for this comic, I 6,000. I made almost like 8,000. That money is paid for the next comic. So I laid out the money for the first comic, and that's really all I can afford. Unless the next comic does like your boy Zach numbers. You know what I mean? So I'll make as many comics as I can afford to make. But I also don't have any illusions that it's going to be my job. It's more a hobby. It's a hobby where I break even. Like my brother goes to the bar and drinks beer. His hobby goes more than I spent $8,000 making a comic book, but I got it all back. He spent $8,000 drinking beer and didn't get it back. So, and I got a comic book to show off.
Yeah. And I have to say to anybody who's interested in comics, go check out Heroic Tales #1. I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous in talking to you before I actually read the book, because I kind of hate. Well, I kind of hate comics that are like Invincible or The Boys.
Okay.
So part of their shtick is that they're more about the inner lives of like who these superheroes really are and this and that. And you had mentioned that, we're going to learn about the Patriarch's family life and this and that. And, does anybody really care if Superman, if Batman has a kid or, so I was worried. But my biggest problem with those is that they're just so self-indulgent. Other than The Tick, I don't think I'd ever seen one that was done really well. And, I was quite surprised because you do see like, I don't know, like if you ever see what people in customer service have to go through, like there's kind of a little bit of that in this, where there's like I forget the lady's name who was jumping off the building.
Oh, Regina.
Regina, yeah. If you were a superhero, you would have some crazy fans who the basement gets flooded every time she gets saved, jumping off a building with him. And, she leaves lipstick on his collar, like, oh no.
Yeah, he catches her in midair and then she plants one on him, and then to the rest of the story, he's got lipstick that he doesn't realize on his, and then when he comes home, is white. You know what I mean? I'm hoping to build up tension. Like, he's trying to go home. The guy's got lipstick on his face. How is this going to react?
And so that was kind of one of my questions is, how did you find the right level of restraint? Because like with, you get into things like in Invincible, and you had, I keep wanting to call the character Fornicate, but her name was Duplicate.
Yeah.
And she would make copies of herself to have like group sex with men, and it's like, what's wrong with you, Garth? But how did you find that line to where it's like, oh, okay, this is actually interesting without becoming like self-absorbed?
Well, first off, I want it to be all ages, but keep in mind, all ages doesn't mean children's book, because the suit has a shocking scene in it, that I actually was thinking I got to kill this story. And then I was like, no, I'm not killing it. And a few people like, that was shocking, but the 80s had shocking comics. Like this is supposed to be Bronze Age 80s Marvel comics. And if anybody's old enough to remember, there was a lot of shocking stuff. We also had punk rock. You went to see a PG-13 movie, there was nudity and gore and blood. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't want any nudity, and the gore will be acceptable level of gore for the story. I mean, it's guys who have lightning powers and stuff like that, battling it out. But like, you're not gonna see the Patriarch's wife like just walk around topless. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be something that could have came out in Marvel Comics. So that's my own self limitations. But I like good guys. I want a guy that you could root for. And the Patriarch, I got tired of all these people like, oh, toxic masculinity, and then you turn on the TV and the dad's the butt of every joke. You know, I just got tired of that, and so I was like, I'm gonna make the most positive masculine character, and I'm like, what could his name be? The Patriarch. You can't get more masculine than that. So, and if you're a patriarch, it implies you have kids. You have, you know what I mean? So he has 7 kids. He has a wife, and his wife's not an egg. You know, he loves his wife. He doesn't cheat on his wife. Like, that's the whole purpose of Regina. Regina was supposed to be sexy, and, you know, she's throwing himself at him. And, you know, I also like that trope in comics that they don't do anymore, like the Spirit, you know, women were throwing themselves at the Spirit, and then the Spirit, like, you know, like Plastic Man was doing it too. And if you remember Captain Marvel, but Captain Marvel was, because he was really a 12-year-old boy, he was just show.
Yeah.
But that was like always the trope that the women were throwing them. So I was just like, I kind of want to do that, but it makes sense because he loves his wife. He doesn't cheat on his wife. You know what I mean? And if you saw it, he's very concerned about Regina at the same time. You know, she's got problems, and her story is going to be coming up around issue 4 or issue 5. You know, why she's like that. So, you know, so when you said, how did I strike a balance? Well, I got feedback. My original script was world building the comic. You know, I introduced like 20 superheroes, the nature of superpowers, everything. And people were just like, yeah, but I don't care. You know, just imagine, you know, just imagine you got the entire story of Game of Thrones in the first episode. And in this land, you got the Starks, and over here, you know, it was just exposition. You're like, I'm not watching episode 2. So I just went, okay, I'm going to rewrite the script, and I'm going to focus on one character. And I hope you get little germs of world building. But I realized nobody cares about world building unless they care about the people who live in the world. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to, you know, I want every issue to be self-contained. There's going to be 2 stories in every issue, 2 self-contained stories. But like old Marvel comics, they build on each other. You know, it's not like old DC comics where the status quo was reset and it doesn't matter if you miss an issue. Like, it will matter. You'll be able to understand Heroic Tales 2 if you don't get Heroic Tales 1. But I'm hoping maybe you'll pick up something. Zach 10, the Patriarch Mind Behind the Flesh. Yes. Yeah. Science City is a fictitious city in the real world. It's near Yuma, Arizona, and it was built in the ground was broken in the year 2000, and that's going to be, there's something wrong with Science City. You know, yeah. Why? Like, I love like Gotham City. Like, how come people dress up like clowns and penguins and killer crocs, but they don't do that in Baltimore? You know, well, you know, when was the last time Seattle had a guy dressed up as a platypus and attack a bank? There's something wrong with Gotham City. So I love the idea of like, there's something wrong with the town. So Science City, there's something wrong with Science City. There's a reason. So Boss Moxie, who's on the first page, he was just a construction foreman. And then one day he just woke up and was like, yeah, I'm a 30s gangster, you know, and went out and started robbing banks in broad daylight, you know, and then, you know, but people just do it in science because, I mean, I'm going to be exploring it, but, you know, and I'm going to have a time travel story where they're going to go to the Old West. And there's always been weirdness in that where Science City is built. There's, you know, there's something about the land itself. And that's why it was selected. But of course, things go wrong, you know, and I'm beating around the bush because I don't want to explicitly tell what's going on. But
sure.
The guy who designed Science City, he's an architect called Ian Strange, that from Lovecraft's Strange Eons. You know, so his name is Ian Strange, and he's a lunatic magician architect, and he designed the perfect utopian city based on magic glyphs and symbols. And I'm going to have Renzo actually draw a map, probably
nice.
2, because I think I might be 2 pages short. You know, so I'll draw like a double page spread map of a magic glyph and everything. And this was supposed to be a spell woven into the materials and magic circles to contain, because it's built on top of a nexus of ley lines. That's the magic secret. In that part of the world, there's magic ley lines that all intersect, and then, you know, the ley lines intersect are powered by the magic spells, and then everybody's supposed to be perfect utopia. But Philip Manning, the industrialist, he didn't use the proper materials. And if you see there's a statue, like a Colossus of Rhodes, he built a statue of himself in the middle of the city. According to the plans, that was supposed to be a spire. And this spire was the focus of all this magic energy, you know. But instead, you got a statue, so all this magic energy is dispersed improperly, and now people are waking up and going, "Hey, I'm going to rob a bank," you know. And I know, you know, and there's people who don't like the fact that Science City was built there, and you know, a whole bunch of, you know, we can't build it there. Can't you see that? I can't see magic stuff, you know. So there's like fairies that are like pissed off. You interrupted our Lee lines.
So, are you gonna have like conspiracy theorists in here? Like,
oh yeah,
get your Alex Jones type, like, Science City is going bad because there's smart meters attached to the 5G towers.
Of course, that's conspiracy theories are great story mill, you know. Absolutely. I'll say this: I think issue 4 is going to deal with Bigfoot. You know.
Oh, that'll be great.
It's going to be, and already I'm introducing little tidbits that, you know, I'm hoping by issue 10 everybody's going to be like, oh, like the origin of the Patriarch. I'm going to put something in it that people can be like, okay, all right, I buy that. That's whatever. And then a couple of issues later, you're going to be like, oh, that's why he said that. And then I hope you flip back to the origin of the Patriarch in issue 3, and like a tear might come down your eye if I do it correctly. So I don't know. I want to like reward the longtime reader, but I don't want to alienate the new reader.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did it the right way.
Thank you.
Origin stories are, you know, talking about self-absorbed superheroes. Like in some ways, origin stories very often are like self-absorbed storytellers. Because if you think about it, how long did we have to wait to hear a Wolverine origin story, right? And he was just in there cutting things up, and people loved the guy,
right?
And they love to speculate about the origin. So
that's funny, because originally I was going to do the origin of the Patriarch, but then I'm like, does anybody really care? Does anybody care about the origin of a character they don't know anything about? So I just told the story. You know, he's already been a superhero for 22 years, 24 years at that point, because it's set in 2024. He gets his powers in 2000. You know, and so, you know, I'll cut back to rookie Patriarch when he was skinny and didn't have a beard and got taken advantage by ad executives, and he's endorsing the wrong project, you know, and, you know, causing controversy. People didn't love him as much as they do now, you know, things like that. But right now, he's at the top of his game. You know, he's handsome. He knows what to do. He's probably the most experienced active superhero in America at this point, you know, so he, but at the same time, the cat's already out of the bag, but he has telekinesis. He doesn't have super strength or invulnerability and stuff like that. So, you know, he's a man. He's acting tougher than he is. And then the bad guy in the comic figures out you're not as powerful as you know. So when that bad guy shows up again around issue 11 or 12, he's going to be a bigger threat, because he's going to know exactly. And it's funny, because I was talking to guys at work who aren't really comic book people, and when I explained what the powers are, and he goes, oh, that means you can defeat him by doing this. I was like, wow, you're pretty good for a guy who doesn't read comics.
And then you're like, let me make a note.
But you know, I call it a Marvel weakness, you know. Long time comic book, you know, like Spider-Man's weakness was Aunt May, and you know, Spider-Man wasn't like, oh, I'm allergic to bumblebees or something stupid like that. Spider-Man's weakness was Aunt May needs this medicine, and I got to choose. Do I fight Dr. Octopus, or do I do the, you know, like, so if I was playing a role-playing game, like Spider-Man, Peter Parker's weakness would be like dependence. He's got a dependent that he needs to deal with. So I like that kind of weakness rather than the color yellow or kryptonite, you know, the DC, you know, and I still love Superman, but so I want to have all my characters have like when you find out their weakness, you're like, that totally makes sense. Like next issue, I introduce Captain Atlas, who is the Superman of my world. He's the longest running continuing superhero. He's like in his 80s at this point, and he's like, you know, he could literally move the earth. he's Atlas. But wait till you find out what his weakness is. It's gonna be like, oh my god.
Well, I think that's important. That's where a lot of comics sort of went wrong. Like, I made a video last year, what's wrong with Superman in 2024, and that would have been a number 3. I only talked about my 2 main things of what's wrong with Supes, but number 3 is like they gave him too many powers. He was invulnerable to everything.
Right.
So like nobody knows what to do with him. Nobody knows how to make him interesting.
Right. That's why they literally had to introduce kryptonite in the 50s because he could do anything. And that's another thing. Somebody wrote an article of like, isn't it selfish that Superman takes time to himself? Like he literally could, because he doesn't need to sleep, he doesn't need to eat. So for him to rest is like, you can tell me there's not somebody falling off a cliff somewhere in the world, somebody getting hit by, and he could see everywhere. So like him going on a date with Lois is selfish. You know what I mean? But like the Patriarch, he has super senses. He could, he's got the male gaze. It's kind of a joke, but I call it clairsentience. He could literally, almost like an astral form, he could release all 5 of his senses at the speed of thought and check. And the more familiar he is, the more clear he could do it. But he's vulnerable while he does it. He's literally blind. Like he could be on fire and he doesn't know it because his sense of touch is gone. His sense of smell is. So that's why he does it when he's up in the air, because he knows he's. But it's strenuous and it's dangerous. So he can, in my opinion, relax because he needs to. He's a human being. He physically is the same as us. He just has these mental powers, and he needs to rest. He's not godlike like Superman. Somebody said in the chat.
Yeah, Zocton asks, would a young man call himself the Patriarch?
He didn't name himself. Regina named him that. She gave him the superhero name. You'll see that in the origin story. And Regina's story is so sad. Why she's got a problem. Yeah, somebody said, how can you get my comic? You could go to Fund My Comic. It's still available. Fund My Comic, Heroic Tales. His weakness is alimony and child support. No, he loves his family. He loves his kids. He wants to. Also, I was talking about this the other day, so I don't think I'm spoiling anything. In my world, having superpowers is not natural. Something happened in the past. Human beings are not supposed to have superpowers. So everybody with superpowers, it's a slope to insanity. Like you get the one ring, it's only a matter of time before you get corrupt. Whereas Samwise was never corrupted because he didn't really, I'll give you a garden. He's like, I already got a garden. I just want my. So the Patriarch, his saving grace is that he has a family. He's grounded. He everything he doesn't do it for himself. He does it literally for the love of his family and his city. Whereas other superheroes are starting to be like, okay, I think I could protect everybody if only I took over the world. Things, and they become. Oh, Captain Atlas's weakness is alimony and child support. That would be too to what I'm going to do to poor Captain Atlas.
I would find it kind of funny if the Iron Man of your world had it. Like he's got all these great plans for super futuristic armor, but he can't afford anything. Like he's just got to he's got to go dumpster diving outside a Radio Shack or something.
It's funny because again, whenever I talk to you, we always talk about role-playing games, but all of my ideas are based on a superhero role-playing game called Villains and Vigilantes that my friends and I have been playing since the 80s, since this game came out. So I'm not even joking. I must have over like 2,000 superhero and non-player characters, NPCs. And I have a couple of Iron Man ripoffs, but they're just too much like Iron Man that I can't put them in Heroic Tales unless I could think up a different angle, So what would I do with an Iron Man? But back to the superpowers. The origin, all superpowers comes from another dimension. So everybody kind of has like a dimensional portal in their head if they have superpowers, and it alters the way they think. And sooner or later, a lot of these people go crazy. There's there's a supervillain that I'm going to introduce called the Subhuman. He's my Namor character. He aquatic.
Nice.
At first, he's just an aquatic guy who robs ships in the ocean. Go to cruise lines. Give me all you. And he gets beat so bad that he pulls so much energy, and he literally thinks he's the king of Atlantis. Now you can't convince him otherwise. In his, the Patriarch has these telekinetic powers because he believes he has these telekinetic powers. Patriarch flies because there's no doubt in his mind. So the Subhuman is like, no, I'm the king of Atlantis. And when you challenge, I call it a metapsychosis. They go metapsychotic. And when you challenge somebody who's metapsychotic, that it's like telling them, like, no, you're not you. Yeah, and you're somebody, like, it's so absurd that they start to panic, and when they panic, they could literally alter reality to fix their delusions. So the Subhuman literally was challenged, and was like, no, I'm the king of Atlantis, and he freaked out, and there was an earthquake, and there was these ruins created in the ocean someplace, and then these poor people who were on the cruise ship tumbled over. They became these aquatic, against their will, they're aquatic, terrified sea creatures now, and they're like, we don't want to, they're imprisoned by the will of this metapsychotic being. So it's so bad that there's an alien race that monitors the galaxy for super powered beings and exterminates worlds where there's super beings. Unfortunately, Earth hasn't come up on their radar yet, so that's,
very cool.
Because what if you decide you're Galactus?
That's
what
a
if
good
you
point.
decide? What if you like I came up with this idea from the Jean Grey Dark Phoenix story. She was a normal superhero who went metapsychotic. And her powers and then an alien race came and took her out. I mean, it's not that original of an idea. I bet crazy cult leaders could be a challenge. Yeah, I have an idea for a religious supervillain who literally has the power of persuasion and charisma.
So, Heroic Tales 1 was a success, and hopefully you'll be able to build on the success with this. So today we got the news that Diamond has finally filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Meaning there are a lot of smaller companies that are perhaps in trouble. And I think doesn't Marvel only distribute through them, or have they gone the DC route and started shipping with
I don't know, to be honest. I got so disappointed with the mainstream comic press. I'm that kind of guy, like, I use this metaphor all the time, but like, when you break up with your girlfriend, I don't call her and I don't go on Facebook and see what she's doing. I broke up with Marvel and DC, so I kind of stopped following the news for them. So I really don't know, but I feel bad for comic shops. I love comic shops. Like, are they going to be hurting? Like, are there? Because now I know that there's Luna and there's a couple other, like, will they be picking up the slack? But also keep in mind, Marvel filed Chapter 11 and came back. So
yeah,
this could be.
I mean, this just could be restructuring, just a way to like avoid some debts. But a lot of people have been saying that there's rumors, that they haven't paid contractors on time since the 90s, and that there's always been money problems. And I'm just wondering, is this sort of going to be the final straw that breaks the comic cartel's back? And now like shops and then also individuals are going to start looking for alternate distribution, either directly from the creator or maybe,
will this be a good thing for crowdfunding people? I don't know. I tend to think that the average normie is just like, well, comics were fun. You know what I mean? Like, who really, like again, guys that I work with know me personally, and I talk about them, and they're like, I'm not going to a website paying for a comic and then waiting 9 months to get it. Like,
yeah,
get back in touch with me when you have a comic in your hand. And I you know what I mean? So crowdfunding really is weird to the normie. So I don't know.
I almost disagree just a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Because now I totally agree with you that, nobody wants to wait 9 months to a year to get their comic, and especially not for $25. But, as we have more and more people doing indie crowdfunding stuff, they're going to be able to sell older books for cheaper, right? Because at some point, you'll be able to do, well, here's the trade paperback for Heroic Tales 1 to 4 or something like that, which theoretically you would be able to do. You'll be making, it'll be 100% profit for you once you
Right.
take
That
off the
was the
printing cost.
plan. When I got a couple issues down to like go through Diamond and maybe sell individual copies or collect it. Like that was the plan sooner or later. I mean, it's not going to be, well, maybe still Diamond. I don't know.
So, but I mean, if you think about it, let's take 2018 as the year that online comics, there were before, but like it really sort of stepped up a notch. Once we're in like 2028 and people have 10 years of a backlog that they could sell at cheaper prices, I think they're potentially um, going to be in a better spot because, like your buddy, like, oh, you want it now? Okay, here you go. I just ship it out.
Right.
And then they'll have several, it won't be like one issue and maybe 10 years later, you'll get another one. You'll be able to read several right away. Theoretically, you'll be able to print a cheaper version.
Right. That's the plan because nobody's going to buy my comic at $10 in a newsstand when they could get Spider-Man and Batman and everything like that for whatever the price is,
6 or 8 or whatever. Yeah.
No, but yeah, so I hope when the time comes that my backers don't get mad at me. You got it cheap over here. But
I mean, from a guy who hasn't made any comics yet, on the sideline, I think that there were 2 main problems to cheaper reissues of some of the books. One is make a different cover.
Right. Make it known that it's a different edition.
Yeah, because you want that collector's edition.
Right.
So any collector would say, no, this is the actual first printing. It's a limited print run. It's extra super special. New cover, and then I would say like less inside. Like for something like this, I'd say probably don't have the B story included. So that's like a collector exclusive, or you sell another issue that's all the B stories collected.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of that. Yeah, I agree. I'm going to get quoted now, but I never liked Diamond. I worked at a comic store in the 80s and 90s, and we went to those retailer conventions, and and the Diamond, I can't prove it. This is pure conjecture on my part, but I always thought it was like organized crime that kept this monopoly going. Like there was, like they squashed all competition, and they really gave us vague threats. And I was always like, I just want there to be another. I want there to be another distributor. So now I'm happy that there's more distributors. Now I just hope that if Diamond, whatever restructures, I just hope all these, they always say like, capitalism will provide. So I just hope other distributors pop up and make it, because I think it's Diamond's fault that comics are doing as bad as they are, because they demanded so much. 50% of the money for a comic book goes to Diamond. For what? For mailing it to you? And then they didn't want to go. They pretty much killed the newsstand. And the newsstand was, to me, that's where the newsstand was as far as getting new people. And I don't think it's any coincidence that comics started to drop off when comics went to direct market only. Again, like I was joking before, but it's not a joke. Nobody just is going to wake up and be like, you know what? I'm going to go on the computer and look to see if there's any comic books that I could pay for now and get in 9 months, because I'm kind of interested in. Nobody does that unless they're totally into comics. Now go back 20 years. Nobody just goes, you know what? I'm going to go and seek out a dingy little poorly lit store that sells comic books by a condescending guy who's going to make fun of me because I don't know who Mac Raboy is, and then get into comics. So, so there was always, Mark Miller was on both our channels, and he said something that really, really, he's the as far as I'm concerned, he's the comic book guy right now. And he said comic books go through 30-year cycles. It was 30 years on the newsstand, 30 years on the direct market. And so I think that's why he went on all of our channels, because I think he thinks the new thing is going to be. But I don't know. I see you shaking your head. I don't know if he's right or not, but it really made me think there was, newsstands dominated comic books, and that was like the
Yep.
most healthy. Everybody, my father,
Yeah.
my mom, everybody got comic books. It was just understood. You were an American kid, you got comic books,
Yeah.
and that's how I
Well,
became obsessed with comics, because they would. I don't even remember buying them, but we had stacks of them in the house because I have hundreds of nieces and cousins, and and brothers and sisters. So there was always freaking comics, and I was the crazy kid that collected them all and organized them, and and they were like,
yeah.
hey, you like comics? Here you go, kid. Here's a box of comics. I don't care anymore. I like girls now.
I think there were really three big things that sort of did in comics like that. One, I think you're right. It's the direct market. Comic book stores only work when they're like the food web, where you start with like plankton and then something eats the plankton and then there's a predator that eats the thing, that like they're higher up on the chain, but you have to have that level of plankton, which is the ubiquitous comic.
You got to have the drug dealer on the corner. Here you go, kid.
Yeah.
Try this. And that's what the newsstand was. And I like this is a dated story, but when I was a little kid, my mom smoked Ken King cigarettes. I'll never forget. Ken King, go get me Ken King. And she would give me $2. Ken Kings were $1.75. I don't know if you youngins. So I'm riding my bicycle down to the deli. I put in, 8 quarters. Pull that handle. The pack of cigarettes come down. They would sell cigarettes to a freaking 9-year-old kid, and then I would take that corner and go up to the newsstand and buy a comic book. It was like an equitable deal. I went to the store to buy my mom the cigarettes, and I came home with comic book. My mom, it was understood. It was a quarter charge for that bicycle ride down to the deli. And it was basically free. 25 cents. Even back then, 25 cents was now, and now think about it. You got your kid, you're at the supermarket, even if there was a newsstand, you're like, hey dad, can I get that's Batman? And you're like, okay. And then how much? $6? What do you I don't have $6 change from groceries. Eggs are $12. I don't have $6. And then you get the comic and you're like, what is going on? I can't follow this. That's one of the things I want to do. I can't do much about the price. It's $10 for my comic, 2 complete stories, and you know what I mean. But I can make it complete. So if I was to never make another comic book again, at least you got 2 full stories. So I just think like 12-issue stories are cool, but think about that. That's $5 a comic times. You paid $72 for a story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that. And, if you look at it, as much as we say comics are doing terrible, they got no problem selling manga. And it's like, it's not like, I wouldn't say that mangas are comics, but they're not that different.
But they are comics. It's just comics made by a different country, you know what I mean? Or different sensibilities. But think about manga is they have a start, they have a middle, and they have an end. Now, it could be 3 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, but things change, characters die. And if you get, I'm just going to make up One Piece. If you're into One Piece, you could get the definitive beginning for $12, and you get like a phone book sized book. It's a great value. I don't read manga. It's just an age thing. I missed manga. I understand it's good, but I like my floppies, and then I go to DC and it's just like, oh, the Flash reboot #1 again. I'm like, oh, isn't this the 6th Flash reboot? Like, what about the last one? Oh yeah, it's a new Earth. It does. I'm like, who cares? Like,
that was last year's new reboot.
Yeah, like I come to the realization that I like the world. I like world building. I'm one of those I've been talking about this a lot lately. Like my favorite of the Tolkien books is the Silmarillion, and I just love like the genealogies of the race of the elves, and then this guy goes over here, and all the elves migrated over here and diverted and remerged, and they got this name and that name and this name and that name. And I love memorizing all that stuff. Like even when I was in Catholic school, it's like I love memorizing the names of the kings and who's the good king and the bad king, and what wars and campaign. I love all. That's why I'm a history major. I'm trying to memorize the names of all the Roman emperors and and their campaigns and who their generals. I love all that stuff. And then just imagine it's like, yeah, but that's the old Roman Empire. We rebooted it, and now like those generals don't matter. It's all you're like,
Yeah.
I don't care about the Roman Empire anymore. Then, like, if nothing matters, you could just reboot. That's why that's why I like Marvel for so long, and now even Marvel doesn't really care about their continuity anymore. So if they don't care, then I don't care. Like, I really liked Len Wein, built up on the works of Roy Thomas, who built up on the works of Stan Lee. You know, and even like, I don't understand this, but there's a little asterisk that I could read Avenger 17 and figure it out. And then there was only one Avenger 17, so I could go get that comic and read it. Or you know, these days you could read it online. You don't even have to buy it. You know.
Yeah. So Eric says manga is usually one cohesive and ongoing story. No reboots, no multiverse, no weird stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what you were talking about. Is the problem with all these reboots is like the stuff you like doesn't matter,
right?
Because it's just going to get reset. Whereas, like, you know, at least when things were good, you had to build off of the stuff that went before. You couldn't. I mean, you kind of sort of could retcon them, but that's usually when a comic series was on its way down.
Right.
You know?
Or you could be clever.
Yeah.
And retcon something. You're like, okay, like the biggest retcon that worked was Bucky was no longer dead. I don't think there's a comic book fan that's just like, oh man, Bucky should have remained. Like, they did it really well. And I tell you, when I found out Bucky was coming back, I was like livid. But it was a good story. Yep. And it worked because you never really saw his body. You know, he fell off a plane into the mists. You know, there was wiggle room, but like, you know, everybody gets their head cut off, ripped up, and then like they're cloned or they come from another dimension. You know, like I don't care.
Yeah, that's you know, it's funny. On Twitter, like this past week, I had made a comment that I consider anything after X-Men 280 to be fan fiction. And X-Men 280 was like 1991. But then somebody replied and he's like, oh, well then the Krakoa story must have been great fan fiction. It's like, Krakoa was freaking awful. By issue 3, they were just killing people and bringing them back. Like, why would I care about anything they do? Nothing they do is heroic.
Right.
You know, like it's heroic because you might lose your own life. You know, why?
Yeah, nothing mattered. They conquered that. There was no, you know, and then to me, the biggest defense of the Krakoa era was every 6 months they went to the Hellfire Gala. Now, as a person who cherishes those old Dark Phoenix stories, the Hellfire Club was not a good thing. The Hellfire Club was the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever her name was.
Yeah.
They were horrible sex club people who roofied Jean Grey to do horrible. If you read the comics, read between the lines, the stuff that they were doing to Jean Grey. And then they had Jean Grey like sexually torturing other people, like pretty explicitly. And now we're going and hanging out. Peter Parker's dressing up a suit, taking Aunt May to the gala. It's like Fantastic Four. Or like, hey, let's have a party on Epstein Island, and you know, this is not heroic. This, you know, and of course I wrote a story to fix Krakoa, sent it to Marvel. They're laughing at me because I'm an old, you know, I'm not the Cloud kind of guy, but because I also believe it happened. We can't retcon it. We can't say it was another dimension. Like, if you remember Misery, the movie, he's like, Misery died. She was buried. We have to start there. She was in the book. I read those pages, you know, because James Caan was just ignoring it and starting, no, that's not right. That's not the way. That's the way. Like, I don't like retcons, so I don't want to retcon even the bad stories. Like, we have to keep it in. So I came up with an idea of like this, you know, it's based on a Jack Kirby story from the 40s. The whole world's crazy and blah, 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 you know. And then they all remember the horrible stuff they did, and they're trying to legitimately make up for it. But everybody loves a redemption arc.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Back to Manga. Yeah, Manga goes through different stories. Characters, you know, sometimes characters grow up. When they die, you know it means something. You know, how many times did you, like, everybody dies in Marvel. Who cares at this point?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
You know, like Barry West had one of the best, Barry Allen, excuse me, had one of the best deaths in all the comic books in the Crisis of Infinite Earth. And they brought him back, and it's like, who cares? You know, it's like, you know, Hal Jordan, they ruined his character. Now, how the Punisher came back from the dead. He's a guy who shoots people. You know, he shouldn't be able to come back from the dead. Oh, that's my campaign page.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah, this is
yeah.
still live
So
right now. I mean, you could still buy this comic on Fund My Comic, Heroic Tales. Fund My Comic is a great no censorship platform run by Luke Stone. As he has consistent rules that if you follow, like he wants it to be like you could, like if you scan the main page, he doesn't want like nudity and stuff like that because, you know, but inside the comics you could do what you want. So as long as you maintain his reasonable rules, there's no censorship. He doesn't care your politics. He doesn't, you know what I mean? Just fulfill your comics. If there's a problem with that he'll deal with that too. So you can still get my comic. If you scroll down, you can see some of this great.
well, this is yours. You're sharing this.
Yeah, I'm in control of this. This is Restream. How do I do this? Okay, there we go.
I think just scroll on the window.
Yeah. I thought you were controlled. So this is my page. So this is the main cover. This is Renzo Rodriguez, my artist. The colorist is Daniel De La Silva Rodriguez, who I don't think gets enough credit. You know, this coloring is so good. And then this is a variant cover, also colored by Daniel, but it's drawn by Pat Broderick. I hate saying old timer, but you know, he did classic Marvel comics like the early Captain Marvel, Firestorm, Captain Atom, Lords of the Ultra Realm, and most recently Bronze Star with Mike Barron. One of my favorite. Nice. He's my first favorite comic book artist. You know, I can't afford John Byrne, and George Perez is dead. This is the back cover. I wanted an image to encapsulate everything about the Patriarch. So this is him and all of his kids. You know, he's got an infant. Yeah. He's got a son who's. This is going to cause problems because there's a reason why they're all living on a farm away from civilization. And when you're a 19-year-old boy, you don't really want to live on the farm too much. You know what I mean? He wants to go to college. You know, does the Patriarch, because the Patriarch's identity is public. You know, he got his powers. You'll see it his origin. He got his powers in public. So everybody knows who he is. You know what I mean? So could his kid live in public? You know, that's going to be this is Michael T. Gilbert did a variant cover. He did Mr. Monster in the 80s and 90s. You know, he wanted to do a tongue-in-cheek Silver Age homage. So, you know, I just love this. This is my wife's favorite. And here's some of the interior art. That's Boss Moxie and his three. You know, people are like, why did he have showgirls? I'm like, because he's showing off. You know, he's being as ostentatious as possible. Robin Banks in broad daylight. And you can see there's the statue in the background. There's Invincibles.
I got to say, too, I like that, you know, in this world, at least, we can be honest that part of the reason you would want money is to get girls. So, like, yeah, I'll rob a bank to get girls. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I just love this, the smoke going off the panel. You know, so this was the first appearance of the Patriarch in the comic. This is page 2. Renzo drew this first, and I was like, oh my God, that is glorious. And you can see, I set this whole thing up first off because I was just like, don't anybody just rob banks anymore in comic books? So I wanted to start off with a good old-fashioned bank robbery. Second off, if you notice, you know, there's no words here, but the Patriarch defeats Boss Moxie without a punch. Like, I wanted him to be like, this is a father. What does a father do? When the kids are acting up, dad doesn't just burst into the room and beat the crap out of everybody. Dad will come in and talk. So that's going to be one of the things the Patriarch always tries to reason with you first. You know, he doesn't want to resort to violence, you know. And here he is thinking he could go home because it's the name of the story is Father's Day. He's trying to go home because it's Father's Day. You know, it started out, he's already been up all night dealing with super villain threats, and he's trying to get home. And he uses his senses, and he sees a car going off the cliff. You know, he rescues the family. He even fixes the car because he's feeling bad for the dad. You know, and I also wanted to show how his powers work. You know, he's not just Superman. He's telekinetic. You know, and then he's flying off. That's the end of the free. But you see, he's just beset by problems. This is a coin that you could get a little. It's the size of a quarter. And I was like, what kind of swag would be good with the guy who's about a beer glass? So you could order a beer glass. These are stretch goals, cards of all the characters, Boss Moxie, the Patriarch, and on the back it has Villains Vigilante stats. So if anybody buys the board game, the role playing game Village Vigilantes, you could insert these characters into your game. Unfortunately, the last 2 cards weren't unlocked. It's the other showgirl, and then the bad guy, Dr. Robug, and then there's another card, a secret card, Lucius Kane from the suit. So there's 3 more cards, but I'll show you here on the reward tiers. So you could buy the comics, the coins, $5. Each comic is $10 plus shipping. This one is the Mike Gustovich cover, so you could get this over here, and then you could get a T-shirt. You could get a big challenge coin. You could get a file for a 3D print of your own Patriarch, and you could get a full card set for $10, all 7 cards. And if you want, you could get individual cards. So here's one of the cards that didn't show up because the stretch goal. Mal showed up. Gams didn't show up, so you could get all the cards. And I'm going to be launching the campaign for issue 2. I just want to say sooner rather than later, because it's already 50% done. So
good deal.
Yeah, I believe I want to make it as quick as possible, and the more you get done before you launch, in case you get into a car accident, break your neck, you got a bumper, So that's that's the goal, to launch it as probably in February. I think right now in January is not the best. I'm seeing other people that aren't hitting numbers like they did last year, so I want to see maybe February would be a little bit better. See if after the inauguration, it'll give you a little bit more time.
I think February, March is usually better. People are just too tapped out from Christmas in January.
Right. So I'm that's what I'm going to do. Launch then. Since I'm on your channel, this is a whole nother audience. I've been asking this for feedback. I'm trying to come up with different interesting things to do to drum up excitement. So I had this idea, like the Patriarch. He's got a family. He's got 7 kids. He's got a farm. His wife homeschools. They homestead. They grow their own food. But no man is an island. They do need money. You know what I mean? He doesn't generate electricity and stuff like that. So he has legit businesses. And one of the businesses, he has a vineyard. So he makes Patriarch, but it's all for charity. You know what I mean? Like he employs people. He makes one. So I was like, I have an idea of like, what if the Patriarch got a call from one of his employees, his crop circles. So I have this idea. It's going to be a message in a bottle, and it's going to be the Patriarch investigates crop circles in his vineyard. And I was thinking like a 10-page story, crowdfund that story, and I'm going to contact local vineyards and have a bottle of wine, a limited wine with Patriarch symbol on it. It'll be expensive because I was talking to the guys, like 100 bottles minimum, and this is extra cost. So like, I really like to, and making a 10-page comic is almost as expensive as making a 20-page comic. So like, this would be like an extravagant little crowdfund, but I think it would be like a legit crowdfund. Like I have to hit like $5,000 or it's not going to happen kind of thing. But a small, like a regular size comic, but only 10 pages, just one story, and a limited edition Patriarch bottle of wine. So what do you guys think about that? I've already done the questioning, and I kind of know the costs. I just don't know if people are interested enough. So, but I'm writing the story. I like this story. So,
I mean, I would be interested in the story. I don't know about the wine.
Yeah, I've been getting a few of that. People, and Fun My Comics says, Luke says he has no problem with the wine. I would have to ship everything UPS rather than the post office because they don't.
You'd have to get signatures probably. Because they want to make sure it's not kids.
Right.
Kids buying comics and getting wine out of it.
But I was thinking about that. I think that would be fun. And one of my buddies is like a wine guy, so he'll help me get so the wine's not garbage because I'm not a wine guy. V&V, that's been a while. Silver Ogre says, "Yeah, I still play. Matter of fact, Sunday we're playing a game. Don't tell my players, but I'm kind of fascinated with in China. The Chinese government just flooded whole towns
Yeah, yeah.
So what if there was something in the town that they need? And we got to get there before the communists get there. So I had this. It's going to be an underwater superhero adventure, but it's going to be in the middle of China. So all of these, one of the guys he could grow super big. I ain't going to help you when you burst out of your suit and you drowned underwater. So that's going to be
interesting.
A cool story. I love environments that hamper the players.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of the problem. Like Superman needs to, fight someone where he can't go full strength because he might injure civilians, or
on another
he's
planet,
by a national monument or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I like when Superman goes on another planet and it's like, I'm not as strong,
Yeah.
The red sun radiation or whatever. So
he's got to think about it. I mean, that's what most superheroes. I mean, that's the problem with a lot of superhero stories is like it's just like who's going to punch harder, like how many objects are you going to tell the artist to draw them crashing through? That's like the only disparity in a lot of modern comics. Like it used to be like, oh well, I'm gonna, Colossus is gonna throw Wolverine into the water tower, which will knock that over and put out the fire that's threatening a school bus full of kids or something. Like there was some intelligence to the fights,
right?
Whereas now it's like,
yeah. It's funny because like the fight scene in the comic, I'm like, do I just pad out this comic by putting extra pages of fight scenes? Like, and like, does he just throw punch, and then the guy's defeated? Like, I wanted him to have some sort of cleverness. Writing a fight scene in a comic book is harder than I thought. Yeah, wine is a bad idea. How about a beer? You're not the first person to suggest that. Like, and I know who did it. Don Simpson had Megaton Man beer. I know you could go and get. You could get like a limited. You could go one of these microbreweries, but I don't know how much it costs to make the can and everything like that. But and if that's the case, then the Patriarch, instead of a vineyard, he'll have a whatever you grow for hops. What makes beer? I don't even know. I'm not a drinker.
I'm not either. But
BGC says V&V stats. Here, I'm gonna get a card. So if you could see this, so this is I can't even see. This is Molly Cusack, Moll. She may or may not be the actual brains behind Boss Moxie's operation. For some reason, people like this character, so I think she might have to come back. She was just a throwaway, unnamed character, but it's funny how sometimes people are like, you gonna write more of that character? But on the back, you see it's got the V&V logo.
It's upside down.
Oh no, it's not upside. It's just the camera is showing it backwards.
Okay.
So you could see the stats. It's written backwards, but that's because I'm facing it. But it's got like, if you ever played V&V, it's got their level, their age, hit points, powers, and all the V&V. So you could literally take these cards and insert these characters into your V&V game. If you're 60 years old and bought this comp, well, V&V is still available at Fantasy Games Unlimited. To the point, I called up Scott Bizarre, the owner of Fantasy Games Unlimited, and he was really excited. He's like, yeah. And he goes, how about when you have like a couple issues under your belt, you make like a source book.
Module, yeah.
I was like, absolutely. I would love to do it. And then well, the characters have classic Jeff D thighs. Jeff D was one of the original creators and artists of V&V. And then I got a message from Jeff D threatening to sue me.
What?
Yeah. And I was like, it's not the first time. I have a Villains Vigilantes forum.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to www.villainsvigilantesforum.com, I've been running this forum for literally 20 years. And at one point, it was the only active Villains Vigilantes anything on the internet. And Jeff D threatened to sue me. I said, dude, nobody knows about your game. The only reason why anybody even knows about your game is because I've been keeping it. And he wanted to take over he was like, give me administrator. I was like, go start your own. So he started his own forum, and it's defunct already, and mine's still going. So when he messaged me, I was like, what, are you going to sue me again? You couldn't stop me 10 years ago, and I got permission from Scott. He goes, Scott doesn't own it. I go, au contraire, I have copies of the court case. and he never bothered me again. So I'm not a big fan of Jeff D. He's a argumentative, happy bully.
Well, it sounds like a good character.
Yeah, he might show up. Heightened charisma, the power everyone wants to roll, said no player ever. RR. Yeah, I tell you, RRNT's he's been on my channel. He's the only other person I know who's still actively into villains and vigilantes. But there's no dump stat in my game. If you don't have a decent charisma, you ain't getting anywhere. I house rule it a lot, and I also have if I'm doing well and if there's demand for it, I would like to write up my own role playing game rules. Maybe help me with that. I have a system that I want to use. Based on mind, body, spirit. Those will be like
okay,
and that's what makes you body would be your hit points, everything like that. Your mind would be your mental, and your spirit would be obviously, but without getting too crazy about it, that's my concept for my role-playing game.
Interesting.
I'm reading the comments. You got a lot of cool comments. Oh, BGC's got to go. Yeah. So BGC, cool. I like that he says he likes the V&V stats. Cool. Yeah, I love again. I'm playing this weekend, and I play Dungeons and Dragons, but I use V&V rules. And Yang and I were talking about this beforehand. I had a fantasy role playing group that we played, but we used V&V rules. I just find them so much better than Dungeons and Dragons. Every stat contributes to your hit points. Rather, like you don't just roll a die 10. I don't know what they do for D&D these days. I stopped playing D&D at 2nd edition. But it's like, okay, you're fighting. Roll 1 die 10 hit points, and maybe you get an extra couple points because of your endurance. So you literally could be a fighter first level with 3 hit points and an 18. And I just hated that. In Village Vigilantes, if you have a high endurance, it contributes a lot to your hit points. If you have a high strength, all your stats, even your intelligence. So if you have a whole bunch of high stats, and if you have minus stats, it lowers your hit points. So I've had players in both for first level. One character's name was Dreadnought. He had 300 hit points at first level, and then his partner called himself Prometheus. He had 3 hit points at first level, and they complemented each other because one was a big tank and the other one was the problem solver. It was like Superman and Batman on the same team. One would go and solve all the puzzles, one would fight all the bad guys. So I love that about like I always tell people, the Avengers, the Wasp was on the same team as Thor, and nobody thought. So anyway, we played the fantasy game. When we all went up to 2nd level at the first, they were like, "What do I get?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? What do I get?" They expected a package. Okay, No, it's the thing I like about Villains Vigilantes. It's you create what you want. Like, what do you think you need? What would make you better? So, and it was like open, and they were like so used to like. I just find most of these role-playing games are on rails. All right, I'm a ranger. I'm 3rd level. Okay, now I guess I get bow expertise. Like you get the same thing as every ranger at 3rd level. So I did away with classes. So you want to be a wizard, but you're wearing plate mail and carry a longsword. Well, you're wasting your points on fighting skills. You're not a very good wizard. But I posted on John's forum today. V&V rules are fun, worth your time. Oh, thank you. Yeah, he visits my forum more than me lately.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I think that's kind of like one of the dichotomies. These days, D&D is more, I would say, package. Like every time you level up, your character, depending on what class they are, will get like a certain package. Like, here's your abilities for this level. Here's your abilities for that level. I know the old Marvel superhero role-playing game, you would level up, but there was sort of no levels. Like maybe you could use it to enhance your power, or you might use it to like increase your reputation. So because it was real interesting. I was reading through the old rules not too long ago, and they really put a lot of emphasis on how much the public liked your heroes. So like all mutants started negative.
Oh yeah.
Or at least if you were known to be a mutant. But like, if you were a robot, you would get extra points, because the 80s.
Yeah. Well, if I ever do design my role play, there's going to be no levels whatsoever. Like you get your experience points and you expend your experience points to increase your strength or find it, finesse your power, stuff like that. But I always thought that was just like, I'm 7th level. It's like, what does that mean in the real world? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I've been an electrician now for 22 years. Am I an 8th level electrician? I just got better at doing this, and I learned how to do this, but I didn't learn motor controls. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Speaking of manga, that's one thing that I really hate about most recent fantasy manga, is like, they'll get sucked into another world and they'll be like, oh, this is like a video game. I'm level 1 right now. I have to grind to level up. It's like, what? That makes no sense.
Like younger guys like at work, like, oh, you're into comics, you must be into Dragon Ball Z. And I was too old for Dragon Ball Z. Nothing against Dragon Ball Z, because I noticed if you say anything bad about Dragon Ball Z, they come after you. I got nothing bad, but like your level is 9,000 and stuff. I'm like,
that's where it went wrong.
Yeah, that's one thing that I banned in like, you never mention your stats, you never mention your levels. I said, because they don't exist. It's just rules.
Yeah.
So we could play the game, but like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not 5th level in the game. Like Captain America doesn't turn around, well, Bucky, you're only 3rd level and I'm a 7th level hero, so I should open up the door.
Yeah.
Why does Boss Moxie have relatively low? Because he doesn't have superpowers. He's just a guy who woke up crazy. Matter of fact, Maul is more powerful than him. She actually has a power.
He must have really good charisma to get all those women.
He has high charisma, natural charisma. Just like Dungeons Dragons, 18 is the best an unmodified human can get. But I think he's 2nd level, so at the best he could have a 19 charisma. I forget. I could look at his card, I guess. But I think he has heightened expertise with pistols and rifles.
Very cool.
So but he's not supposed to be a main villain. He's supposed to be. He's a guy who got to. Well, I don't want to sell that, but he's a guy who got defeated without being punched. He failed his charisma roll and he got psyched out by the Patriarch. Charisma is important, guys.
And he's got money. Got money.
Well,
so potentially new campaign launching in February.
Yes.
When do you think the other comic that we mentioned that I totally am blanking on the name to?
Eddie is Doomed is the name.
Yes, Eddie is Doomed. When are you thinking for Eddie is Doomed?
That one, they just got the script today, so literally the only thing that is done.
Oh, okay.
Is a couple of concept sketches for characters. So
nice.
I don't have any date for that. Like I'm gonna say, like once we get 50% done, I'll start launching the campaign.
Okay.
But we're 0% done right now, unless a script and a couple of character sketches is count. So maybe we're 3% done. So that there's no realistic time. Just sometime this year.
Okay.
The thing is, Tonic Mole, who's one of the artists, one of the creators of this, he has his own comics and he's making like 3 or 4 comics and he's very consistent. So I can't see him prioritizing my comic over his. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's a one shot. So when it comes out, it comes out. If you want, I'll show you this. It's not really a sneak peek. I've showed this before, but this is the cover to Eddie is Doomed. That's
cool.
And these are that's the Doom Keeper. He's like the Monitor or Anti-Monitor, and those are all the superheroes, from the Golden Age and Silver Age. And they're supposed to be tongue-in-cheek hokey because it's kind of goofing on.
Yeah, I mean they were hokey back then.
Right. Yeah. So like that's Robot Gorilla. That's his name, Robot Gorilla. And then
very nice.
Behind Robot Gorilla, there's Cat Nurse, because the people that own Top Comics are like, what do girls like? And one guy goes, like, they like cats, and another guy goes, they like nurses. Cat Nurse. That's the new comic. So she wanders around through the comic going, why am I even here? What am I doing? So, but I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's got such a great ending. But this I can't put a date on, because like I said, we got a cover, we got concept sketches, and we got a script, So and it's not fair to say, hey, Tonic Ball, hurry up. He's got his own comics that he's working on. So what whenever he does. But I also will say that I have a follow-up to this. If this does well, I want to do a comic called The Top 10, because it's supposed to be top comics and there's 10 heroes, and it's going to be the origins of all the top 10 characters. So it's supposed to be comics set from the Silver Age top comics.
Oh,
So
nice.
And I would like to hire 10 different artists to do 10.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. And I'm also working on a mythological story. And I'm being vague at this on purpose because I don't want to give it up. But Renzo's going to draw that, and he might do it in a completely different style. And then Oscar might color it like a watercolory to make it look like an old like Grimm's fairy tales kind of. But it's going to be a historical character, and then all the myths associated with this historical character. So
cool.
I'm purposely being vague, and to me, that is going to be. Like, if I may be arrogant for a minute, that'll be the comic I hope that I'm remembered by, you know. So there you go. Now that it's funny, I enhance charisma when he stands in his wallet. His massive bank account increases his charisma. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean,
there's a reason
that
why
kind of works that way.
The reason why
Exactly.
about women, and it wasn't his face or his physique. Same with Warren Ellis.
Oh man. That's such a. Did anybody not see that coming? Honestly,
I didn't want to. I heard rumors, but I'm going to catch hell for saying this. But I have a consistent stand. I don't believe accusations unless there's like police involved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all these Warren Ellis accusations. It's just like nobody went to the police. Nobody accused him of anything illegal. They just like Warren Ellis was an ugly old guy. He used whatever persuasion he could to get women to sleep with them, and then they didn't get rich or whatever. And then 20 years later, they're like, oh yeah, they regretted it or whatever. Now, I'm not saying Warren Ellis is the good guy here, but like nothing illegal was done, and none of these women were underage. Yeah, it's creepy, you know, but whatever. Nobody went to the so like when they're like, oh, Trump's a rapist, it's like, well, are there police reports? No, there's just somebody. So then I don't care, and I also don't. Oh, Biden's a rapist. Well, is there police reports? Is there any? No. So this woman, anybody can accuse anybody of anything. And so
that's true.
I got whether I like you or dislike you, I'm not going to believe it unless there's, reasonable proof. So now that it's Neil Gaiman and there's just, are there police reports? Like it, are these women that like I don't know. I didn't read it because I'm not paying the New Yorker to read this.
There's well, the other thing about it is apparently he's either in the process of or he recently finished going through a nasty divorce with his ex Amanda Palmer. So, are these accusations from that to make him look bad?
I don't. So I'm my stance is until there's a day in court, until like is he accused of anything illegal? Because being a creepy, dominant, whatever, like they keep saying like he raped this woman in front, but then like according to that article, she emailed him the next day saying, I can't stop thinking about you. When are we going to hook up again? That's not something. And again, I don't know all the facts and I don't want to know all the facts. I'm purposely not reading the article because I am a big fan of Sandman, that comic. And but all I got to say is I got to be consistent. Like, are there police reports involved? Are there authorities getting involved? You know what I mean? If not, then it's he said, she said, and it's none of my business. Because you could talk to some of my ex-girlfriends and they could make you not like me either. Not as bad as Neil Gaiman. I'm just saying we're all the bad guys in our ex-girlfriends' eyes.
I don't know. All those British guys who think they're wizards. There's something's not quite right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, please, when it's Alan Moore's turn, let's please find that he's just an old kook who likes model trains. Because I love Alan Moore's stories. Please don't turn into one of these creeps.
Don't read his what was that?
I know
Lost Girls.
The Lost. I have it too. I haven't read it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
I haven't read that, and I still have all 12 issues of Providence, his Lovecraft story. I haven't read that yet either.
No, I haven't read those either. But I know it's getting late. You are a working man. You got to be up early with the electricity. So everyone, fund my comics. If you are on my YouTube channel. It is pinned up at the top. If you are watching this on X, I put a link in the chat there as well. And I assume John has something on his channel.
Yeah. Fund My Comic and then Heroic Tales. It's pretty easy to find. It's still available. When I launch the campaign for issue number 2, I'm going to close down that site, and then, make whatever. But so you probably only have like a month or maybe a little bit more than a month to get everything on that site before things get changed.
Yeah. But, and so for anyone who's interested, this Saturday, the Nerd Council of Doom moves over to its new channel, which is on YouTube at the Nerd Council of Doom, and we'll figure out how to get it to stream to a few other streaming sites as well. We talk about nerdy things. We talk about comics. We talk about games. We talk about culture and the occasional other stuff. So come check us out. There's myself, the Dungeon Delver, and the Dungeon Minister.
Yeah, I've watched a few times. It's fun. Have you watched Venture Brothers?
I have not seen Venture Brothers. Everyone says that I would love it.
Oh, in season 6, they have the Doom Factory, and it's the Legion of Doom merged with Andy Warhol's factory, and this big head emerges from the Gowanus Canal, and it's Lex. What do they call him? Wex Warhammer instead of Lex Luthor, but it's Andy Warhol, and they got all. Edie Sedgwick is Edie Meany, and she's a little. I don't know. When you said the Legion of Doom, it made me think. I was like, I big smile on my face. I was a big fan of the Andy Warhol stuff, and then of course the Legion of Doom.
They were great back in the 80s.
Yep.
But John, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll see you again before too long. So check out the comic, check out the Nerd Council, and next week I will be back with somebody.
Oh, cool.
So see you guys.